Hi, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. Guilty Gear. It's a series that I've always wanted to try, and when I finally upgraded my PC, I finally got to try Stripe, and I love that game. Maybe I'll talk about it one day, but not today. And after playing it, it made me want to try out all the games in the franchise. And that's when I learned there are like a metric ton of games for this series, including one for the Wonder Swan, and also a bunch of ports of the X game. And I mean a lot of ports. And that's not even talking about the music, which is just amazing. Seriously, go listen to it on your own time. It is just well done. In any case, this series has a lot of good games to it, and it's really hard to decide which one is the best because, well, there's a lot of them, and some of them are just really top notch. However, there is one thing that most fans will agree upon, that the game we're talking about today is actually the worst one in the entire franchise. And mind you, that's also counting the pachinko game. Okay, that last part's a bit hyperbole, but this game is not that good. I really don't have much to say that this game exists. I tried to look up some history for the game, but the only thing I got was from this one article that said, oh, they created it because they just thought they could. Which, I mean, like, good on them for trying? I mean, like, it failed horribly, but still. That attempt of trying something new is still admirable, and I still applaud them for trying that. In any case, it's time to rev it up as we go to Guilty Gear 2 Overture. I would actually start off and explain the lore and backstory of Guilty Gear Overture because there is a lot of information that you kinda need to understand this game, and yes, it is vital because without that context, you're forever lost in this plot because it doesn't really explain any of the minutiae, which you need to not only understand this game, but also the next game. Yeah, this game is that important. But so I'll just try to explain the turns as they come along, because I really don't think anyone really wants to hear me go on about the history of this game when someone has done that really well. Please go watch Wooly vs. video about the history of Guilty Gear. It's really insightful and tells you a lot of things. The game begins with some soldiers noting the disappearance of gears. Gears are biomechanical weapons that basically are like war machines that can level to normal monsters, just very low-end monsters, to kaiju level beasts that they were actually in a war with for about 100 years because of that man. Yes, that's what we call him. His name's Asuka. We'll deal with him some other time. Though while the soldiers don't really care about the disappearance of gears since they're gears, nobody likes them to begin with, so them disappearing is not in their high priority. However, their king, Kai Kisk, God, his name is hard to say aloud, wants to figure out what the heck is going on since they're again gears, weapons of mass destruction that could wipe out a country with just a mere thought. However, before the order can go out to keep on the search, they are attacked by some unknown force. This forces Kai to call upon Soul Bad Guy. Yeah, this series has a lot of weird names. We head over to Soul, who's with a new kid called Sin. Who the hell calls their kid Sin? Why they are traveling together is unknown at the moment, but we'll learn in due time. As we are also forced, at this point in time, to do the tutorial, which I won't go over for now. They soon hit up a town which is actually being attacked by weird goth chicks. And mind you, there is a difference. They're not emo. They try to fend them off, but they really can't do anything for some reason, until they get help by a guy called Izuna, who is able to use magic in such a way that would defy everything that they know about magic. He also says he's a being that came from the backyard, and this is where the game begins to lore dump a lot of things onto you, and I'm gonna try to simplify it as best I can from everything I've been able to pick up. So to explain the backyard, it's basically the source code of the universe, with it also being the universe. And if you would like a better explanation, I'm sorry, that's the best way I could put it to someone. It's basically also where the magic system comes from because basically they're drawing energy from it to become magic. Again, it's really hard to elaborate because even this explanation is not entirely clear about how it works. But in any case, this is also where we learn that the enemies we are fighting, those goth chicks, are called the Viswell. They are also the guys who are trying to gather all the gear. They're trying to do so they can gain access to the power of the backyard. While heading over to the kingdom of Illyria where Kai is, they also meet the leader of the Viswell, that being Valentine, which really irritates Soul for a reason we'll get into in a bit. After pushing her away for a little bit, we actually meet with Kai, sort of, as we actually find Raven, with Kai being under some spell. Raven is a weirder character, and I know I just said that aloud, which is just Basically, he's a servant of that man, the creator of the gears, who was actually mentioned in the last game, though it was in one of those weird branching points where you only met him if you did these certain things, and there's a reason why a lot of people don't know what the hell happened after X2. But in any case, if that man has any involvement in this, it just got a lot more serious. After fighting him for a moment and him leaving because he just wanted to test them because that man wanted to know something. What that is important for later, just don't worry about it. Again, it's a lot of important stuff for later. Again, I'll have to tell you in a bit. In any case, they really have no idea how to free Kai from this spell. So Izuna suggests that they go to Dr. Paradigm, who is also a gear. Okay, to elaborate more on the gear things, while gears are weapons, not all of them are like these monstrosities. More of them can just be whatever they are. And the only reason why the gears were at war with, well, humanity was because Justice was able to mass control them. After she turned off and died, sort of, it's complicated. They basically either turned off or the weaker ones just basically hide away so they won't get bothered. Paradigm himself is a little against helping humanity, but after the Viswell attacked their island, he decides that, yeah, it's the best idea to actually stop this. After Dr. Paradigm frees Kai, Sin begins to have an attitude towards Kai and just runs off. This one we'll get into actually in a moment. Saul then begins to ask if the Maiden of the Grove is safe. For those who are not in the know, the Maiden in the Grove is Dizzy, the child of Justice, who was basically like, I don't really want to do anything, I hate violence and all that stuff. But the government's like, yeah, no, we're destroying you now, take her away. But Kai and Soul decided, yeah, we're not letting this happen. Though you might be asking yourself why the heck they don't just call her by her name? That's actually a little interesting part. You see, her exclusion is actually due to legal issues. Yeah, I know, right? I'll try my best to elaborate on this, but it's a bunch of legal mumbo-jumbo. See, the games were published under Sammy, that is now a part of Sega. But because of how characters are kind of due, the original characters from the first game still belong to them, but the games from X1 and 2 belong to Sammy for some reason. Again, it's a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo, and they luckily got this done by the time XR was being made. In any case, we go to Dizzy and we learn that she's turned into stone. This was done by Kai to make sure that she didn't disappear, and has really no idea how to actually undo it. Paradigm becomes a bit annoyed at Dizzy's presence here as he thinks that Kai wants to use her as a weapon, which he doesn't, by the way, we'll get into that in a moment. Paradigm begins to figure out what the heck is going on since she's able to see what's happening to Dizzy. So let me explain. You see, a while back Paradigm tried to go into the backyard himself, but to remind people, it's mostly pure information, meaning you could be literally quite squashed if you're not powerful enough to keep your sense of self. However, the most he ever got out of it was a few moments where he noticed a big cube in the sky, and he also noticed that man. Paradigm hypothesizes that basically you can't just do whatever you want in the backyard. You need to access the cube by using a key of some sort. He believes those keys being gear cells, but not just any gear cell. They are looking for a particular set of cells, those belonging to Justice, which is why they targeted Dizzy, because she also has Justice cells in her because she's the child of Justice. Thus, Paradigm begins a spell to try to destroy her, so that the Viswell cannot access the cube. However, Kai won't allow that. Paradigm becomes annoyed at him again because he again thinks that he wants to use Dizzy as a weapon, which he doesn't, and Paradigm mockingly jokes at him to say, "What, did you fall in love with her?" Which, he says, "Yeah, so what?" Which really gives off a funny reaction from Paradigm, as Kai begins to explain. So after the adventures of X2, where she was hiding as a jellyfish pirate, they decided that that was a bad idea, and thus Kai was looking after her. And well, one thing led to another, and they fell in love. However, this is only a problem for Kai since, well, he's most well known for fighting the gears. And well, gear hatred is really high. It also wasn't helped that Dizzy also gave birth to a child. That child's name was Sin, which is really a fucked up name now I think about it. But wait, you might ask, how the heck did he get so old? Well, that's because of being a gear. Well, at least some part gear. Basically, it just sped up his aging process. Heck, it's even mentioned in other stuff that Soul had to actually limit his diet a bit just so that he didn't grow up too fast. Thus, his perpetual hunger in the Xrd games. However, this is actually bad now since, well, Finn is just outside. And he also has Justice Cells in him. At least enough to open it. Thus, they try to recover him, but it's too late. The Viswell get the needed enough cells to try to open the cube, and the others have no real way of getting into the backyard. That is, until that man appears and basically opens the door for them after a quick fight. Why is he doing this? Well, he elaborates that this is because there's something bigger out there. Yeah, the Valentines? They're nothing compared to what's going to happen. And this is where my biggest complaint with the game comes in. You see, you notice how I keep saying for later, every so often? Well, that's because this game is just here to set up more plot points in the Xrd games, and not much else. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of good stuff here too. There is some good inside character development and other things for Sin, but otherwise, it's not much. Because for the most part, it's just exposition. Sure, there's good exposition where the characters are also being in character while they're saying this, but nevertheless, it's just exposition. In any case, they head in and basically stall Valentine until Soul can basically break the lock, preventing anyone from accessing the cube. And with that, Valentine basically breaks down because basically she's been having a mental fuckery with her head since she doesn't really know what to do now. As she begins to transform, with Soul staying behind to try to fight her. And after a fierce battle, Asuka tries to rescue him, and Soul basically tries to ask him some questions. But the one that matters most to him was, why did it look like Arya? Asuka doesn't give him an answer, as it drops him out and just basically says, yeah, prepare for the next battle ahead. And that was Guilty Gear 2 Overture. What? What are you talking about? Of course I talked about the game. I talked about the story. Fine, I'll talk about the gameplay. Okay, look, this game is so boring. And I do mean annoyingly boring. Like, let's be clear here. The concept of the game, it's just fine. It's just, also very dull and boring and doesn't do much more than that. So to explain the gameplay, it's basically Smite, or in some regard Dota. Never played Dota, someday maybe. You got a base, the Master Ghost. Your job is to kill it before they kill yours. Or before time runs out, or some other thing. And let me tell you, it is mostly Smite, just really simplified. That's mostly because the game doesn't really focus on it for some reason. Yeah, I know, right? Because you see, the mechanic of the Smite Light is actually only about 6 stages that actually focus on it, and that's not counting the tutorial. Yeah, out of the 19 missions, not including the prologue since that's a tutorial, there are only about 6 of them, with the rest being either story cutscenes or just fighting. And to talk about the combat, it's a little weird because it's not bad. I mean, like, I've seen worse fighting mechanics. This is not one of them. I mean, like, it's really basic. You only have, like, 2 attacks, one heavy and one light, and you can't mix and match them easily. And you also have a cancel mechanic, which really shocked me because I wouldn't expect that, but whatever. It's just that for the most part, I never needed to engage with that mechanic that much, thus I kind of like, whatever? And I mean, like, the basic attack does the job more or less, and really, using the other combos, while is useful at times, can be just annoying to do. or heck, got in my way because sometimes I was trying to back away while I was attacking, making me slide into a foe, which made them drop to the floor, which they take forever just to get off the floor. And you really don't want to leave foes around because they can mess up with your servants. Servants are kind of like the kind of small units that go to enemies, like in Smite, where basically they deal damage to the enemy. And you do need them to try to at least capture some spots around the map so that you can gain mana, which you can use to basically gain more units, power up units, and just some other stuff you might need. My advice for always playing this game, whenever I remembered playing it, was always trying to focus on one line at a time. Try to get as far as I can with one line, making sure that it stays secure, then focus on the other lines over time, so that way I at least have a solid defense. The enemy will actually try to be more spread out, trying to spread their units around, so doing that will actually be more beneficial, but also at the same time they will gain reinforcement, which just messes up everything. Because of that, that means you can't really truly plan around the enemy, unless you already know advance, which just makes them more annoying. I want to also mention this now since I've only ever played the game twice, once beforehand, way beforehand, and the second time for this review. And I don't know why, I was having way more issues on this playthrough than my last playthrough. I think that's more because I played it on my own time where I'm more willing to say, whatever, than here where I just didn't want to waste any time. Cause again, those reinforcements can mess with your plan because you have no real way of telling when they are coming. Oh yeah, and this mission is terrible. It took me over 2 hours of my 6-hour playthrough just to get this mission. I remember distinctly this being not that hard. The mission not only has you and your enemy, but also has Dr. Paradigm, who cannot defend himself for the life of him. All honesty, if I had been on my own, I would have been fine. This mission would have been easy. But because he kept dying, I had to keep on resetting. Thus, I had to watch over him, which did not help any of my plans since I couldn't go over to any of my units and make sure they stayed alive. And I only bring this up because, well, there wasn't that much else to talk about. Because all honesty, that's the game in a nutshell. Not much happening, not much doing. Heck, one of the more interesting parts about the game were some of the boss battles where you had to actually fight another unit. Which was actually pretty interesting because they tried to work the mechanics in here, and it was really interesting. All honesty now, I kinda do want a Muso Guilty Gear game. Why the heck hasn't that ever been a thing? And I mean, to just also reference the fact that there isn't that much in the game, there's also an exhibition mode where you can play against the CPU, Smite Lite, which I have to mention something here because it's important to mention. You see, for story mode, the AI is really more dumb if anything. They'll do stupid things sometimes, but otherwise they're fine. But in exhibition mode, when they're fully charged, oh my god, they are just so powerful. I never won once while playing that mode. I honestly have no idea why. I was doing everything right. I maybe should have watched some of those tournament videos. Oh yeah, that's right, I never talked about this. Yeah, did you know there was a tournament for this game? Yeah, it's really weird. I still to this day don't know how the heck they did all this because it seems really complicated to do this on an Xbox controller, which I put it on because, all the button prompts were Xbox, so I just said, screw it, just use that. And I mean, you can play this game online still, for some reason. At the end of the day, this game's just bad for the most part. While the story is what I would like to say lackluster, doesn't do anything that good, it isn't bad. And I would like to also say that while the gameplay was about the same lackluster, I was more disappointed to it because I was bored. Just genuinely bored. The type of bored that made me say, I don't want to touch another game for a while. That type of bored. And I don't like feeling that type of bored. Next time, we'll talk about a really, really, really old RPG. Though we're talking about one of its many ports.